Great. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming on this journey with us, for showing up today to learn about this ancient story structure that's been around for as long as we've been telling stories, but is not as well known. And I think our culture has suffered because this story isn't seen, known, validated, and held up as much as it needs to be. So what we're gonna do today is I'm gonna tell you my own story using the lens of the heroine's journey. And I'm gonna invite you to participate in it by putting in the chat responses to the questions that I ask. And then when I'm done with my story, I'm gonna show you lots of graphs and charts and diagrams that breaks it down using the pillars and the anchor of the heroine's journey to help orient us to what I've shared. If at any time you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Um, and here we go. Thanks for showing up for this adventure with me. So I went through a journey of individuation, which is what transformation is really about. That's what stories help us determine. How do we individuate? How do we become our own people? The hero's journey, the heroine's journey is about how do we individuate from the family of origin, from our culture of origin, from the world that created us. How do we become our own person in the context, in a way that allows us to identify who we are independent of that world. So my journey of individuation started when I graduated from college and I decided to sign up for the Peace Corps. And when I signed up for the Peace Corps, yes, there will be a replay of this, Cindy. When I signed up for the Peace Corps, I went to embark on the hero's journey because it was the only narrative that I knew of. So I went, and in the classic hero's journey structure, I went alone, I went far away, and I went to fight against something. I went to fight against, so in my case, I was sent to Malawi, East Africa, during a severe drought that led to massive starvation. I lived alone in a rural village and I watched a bunch of people starve to death. And my project was to do something about the AIDS pandemic, but that was secondary to what happened with this drought that led to starvation. And so myself, as well as most of the volunteers in my group, we ended up coming back home with a diagnosis of PTSD. And what was, as you can imagine, just from the glimpse I've given you into what that was like, it was a very, very devastating, hard experience. My family refers to Amy before she went to Malawi and Amy after she came home from Malawi, and I'm not the same person. When I came back, I worked with a trauma therapist for some time, and she said something to me that has stayed with me ever since, and I'm really grateful to her. She was this fierce, compassionate woman who, when I said to her, and this is the question I'm going to ask you in a minute, when I said to her, it was really brutal to be there. It was very, very hard, just to witness that, to be in the midst of that, to feel I had really very few resources or tools to address what I was seeing internally or within me in the context of where I was. And I felt like I'd really failed. And I told her, you know, I but the hardest thing for me, the thing that shocked me the most was when I came home, I no longer belonged. I no longer belonged to myself. I no longer belonged to the world I'd left behind. And I was really isolated and alone and felt lonelier home than I had when I was there. And I said to my therapist, I said, I mean, I must be meant for something really special if I'm going through this much suffering. And she laughed and laughed and laughed. And she said to me, yes, Amy, your situation is unique and extreme, but everyone goes through that at some point in their life, often more than once, and it's called growth. She said, you are not special, Amy. This is just growth. So I invite you to put in the chat a time in your life where you felt like you didn't belong anymore. The world you'd come from, the world that created you, the world you were in, you just didn't belong to it anymore. And I invite you to really reflect on what that gave you in terms of an opportunity to find your way back. And I'm really curious about those moments of like no longer belonging, no longer fitting the world that created you. Um, Coming home from Afghanistan at age of 10. Wow. Wow. Spontaneous spiritual awakening. Yes. Yes. Andrew, that can absolutely catalyze that feeling of not belonging anywhere. Yeah. Yeah, it's so real. A trip to Sierra Leone after 20-year dysfunctional marriage. Yes, wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing these really meaningful 2020 during social justice movement. Yes, Krista. Yeah. Yeah. Visiting from as a military dependent, I never fit in anywhere. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. How to get back feels different than getting there. Yeah, Nancy, really beautiful. Well put. Well put. So in my journey of finding my way back, I found myself for the next 2 decades trying to belong and doing everything that I knew to do, following the hero's journey, which was the only narrative structure template that I became that felt valid to me, that was real. And so what I would do is I would um, throw myself, here's the two worlds I toggled between. I would throw myself, this um, self-sacrificing hero, into projects all around the world meant to address the pain and suffering in the world. So when I learned that the drought that caused the starvation deaths in Malawi was related to climate change, I cashed in everything I'd earned and went up to the Arctic to produce a documentary about youth action in response to climate change. And I gave up having a home, and I gave up having so much because I was going to go, this solitary hero, I was going to go solve for it. I ended up, at one point, I was again left home. I was on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, completing 6 months of training to be a broker for the largest bank in the world because they just started a socially responsible portfolio. I threw myself again and again and again into these global issues that I felt like I, as an individual alone, could pioneer change in. Um, and unfortunately, when one person is going off to tackle climate change or socially responsible investing or any of the other issues that I went to tackle alone, there was no way to win. I always came back home a failure because that's not possible. These were intractable problems. I was one human. I always came back home feeling like a failure, burnt out, um, at the edge of my capacity to function, really, because I'd given everything. I'd given everything to the work I was trying to do in the world. And so every time I came back, I would bring myself into the world of stories and books and writing. So in between these projects around the world, I went to graduate school and studied creative writing. I started volunteering with communities whose voices were most marginalized at the shelters for the unhoused. I led a book group within juvenile hall. Uh, I worked with refugee communities. I worked with folks who felt as though felt like I did, and that they needed a way to come back to themselves after having been in the edges, in the margins. And I later learned from a friend of mine who was a war vet who had pretty severe PTSD, that the ancient samurais knew that if you were going to become a warrior, you had to have a practice to bring yourself home to yourself afterwards. And so the ancient samurais, before you could pick up a sword to begin your training, you had to first master an art form. You had to have a practice to come back to yourself. And so that's what I was doing this whole time. I would go deep into projects around the world. I went to Bangladesh, Mexico, the Canadian Arctic. I was in New York. I was all over the US. I was deeply involved in projects all around the world, burning myself out, and then coming back home to heal myself with writing, with supporting other writers, with finding community. I found an incredible job that let me come and go, where I worked with authors on their book tours. So for a decade, I worked with over 1,000 of our best known, best selling, most accomplished writers when they traveled on their book tour. And I would be beside them in the car with me. And that was a very healing experience for me, because people who write stories, people who commit to stories, people who are authentic on the page and are creating new narratives, they're people that I felt a kinship and a home with in a way that I hadn't felt anywhere else. And yet still, I felt as though I had to continue to throw myself out into the hero's journey. So I would come back, I would heal, I would I would start to find a center within myself. And then as soon as I had enough energy left, as soon as I had enough of a reserve, I would spend it all out there. I would throw it all out into the world. And then I would come back burned. And this was me following the hero's journey. This was me continuing again and again and again, trying to find belonging in a narrative that I since came to learn, and I'll share this more with you. The hero can never really come home. The hero never really belongs anywhere. And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But I didn't know that then. And I just kept trying again. I thought, well, I'd failed last time, but maybe this time I'd be better. Or maybe this time it would work out. Or maybe this time. And I'd make minimal progress, but burn myself out. So this was how I was proceeding until I became a mom. And that changed everything for me. When I became a mom, this whole world, this world, this feminine world that had never really been valid to me, had never really been visible, opened up in the most miraculous way. I no longer could leave my reality to go become the hero somewhere else or attempt to be the hero somewhere else. I had to stay where I was. And I had been afraid that if I didn't continue to go out and fix the world, that I would somehow fall apart, decompose, that I would no longer exist. That impulse in me that needed to do something, that it would work against me. And instead, what I found in motherhood was that I could take that energy, that impulse to fight against the things I was afraid of, and I could turn that into tending to the things I loved. And motherhood taught me how to do that. And it also revealed to me that that's what I've been doing all along when I gave myself into the writing, when I worked with other writers, when I supported the voices of other people coming to the page. And so around this time, I discovered the heroine's journey. And the heroine's journey changed everything for me. And that's why I'm such a passionate um, advocate, proselytizer. I believe that this narrative is one that we need for our time, because had I known about the heroine's journey when I graduated from college, had it been a visible, valid um, path to individuation, then I probably, hopefully, maybe would have taken that journey instead. And I want my children, I want my two daughters and my son to both know that this path is available and it's one they can choose that is just as valid and maybe even more necessary than the hero's journey today. And so when I discovered the heroine's journey, I discovered this whole template, this whole roadmap, this whole way through this journey of individuating myself that was about leaning towards and into what I loved. It wasn't about fighting against what I was afraid of. It was about leaning into what I loved. It wasn't about ending. It wasn't about annihilating. It wasn't about um, violent fighting. It was about opening up. It was about allowing. It was about loving. And there's in the heroine's journey, for those of you who've been in my sessions before, you know that there's it's a template. It's a map that you can follow, that others have gone on throughout all of time, that shows you this is what's likely to happen here. This is what's likely to happen here. You go on the journey of the heroine and you realize that the world you come from is going to resist you. That's the job of the world you come from. It's not because your family doesn't love you or the community that you're in doesn't love you. It's because that system is designed to protect its current state. And so you can learn, for me, it taught me that I didn't have to take it personal, that the world that I lived in was threatened by my growth. That's just part of the process. But it also taught me when I learned about the heroine's journey that in order for me to succeed, I had to find community that could believe in the person that I was becoming, that could see me as I longed to be. I could not do it on my own. So I had to love the world that I came from, but I had to individuate from it and find those who could see who I longed to be and honor it and lean towards me in it. And when I did that, then what happened, and this is the narrative of the heroine's journey, I had to make that choice. I had to choose my light, my love, what I long for matters. It matters to me, and there are others who see it and will support me in it. And I got strong enough, I got anchored in it. And then when I came back to the world that had created me, it transformed the world I came from. And so when I returned, I belonged more to myself. I belonged more to the people that I had cultivated a connection with, and I belonged more to the world that created me than I had before. I was able to transform the world that I had left behind with more light. And so instead of the hero's journey where I kept feeling less and less like I belonged, when I followed the heroine's journey, I belonged even more. And I allowed that belonging to spread out to others. I created the container for longing to be deeper, stronger, more durable and resilient within me and within those that were in my community. So that's why I'm so passionate about this story. That's why I think it's the necessary tale for our time. I want it to be part of our consciousness. I want it to exist and in subconscious, unconscious. I want it to be everywhere so that it's something that we step towards. It becomes the habit as opposed to the norm of the hero's journey. And I'm going to break that down for us now because that's um, lots of story. But what does that mean? And how do I articulate that for you and show you a different way? So we just talked to the creative sort of story-based part of our brains. Now we're going to talk to the linear, logical, factual parts of our brains that want something to anchor it in. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to show you this, some anchors and pillars from what I've been talking about that'll help us really, really understand what I'm talking about. So here we go. I'm sharing my screen with you. And okay, can everybody see this right here? Great. Okay. So here's my source material because I think it's really important to honor those who've done the work of making this visible to us. Um, because the hero's journey is the dominant narrative, you have to know what it is to know what it's not. So I've been really deep into exploring that. Maureen Murdoch is really the grandmother, the first one to bring it to our awareness that there was this alternate journey. And I'll talk a little bit more about a conversation that she had with Joseph Campbell that led her um, to go through this creation, to make visible to us this story structure that has been around since humans began telling stories. I love Gail Carriger's rendition of the heroine's journey. It's very pithy and sassy, and it's very fun. And then my favorite, to give a shout out to my British Columbia friend, is The Virgin's Promise, which is written by a woman who lives in British Columbia, and is just such a beautiful, beautiful understanding of what we're going to go through today. Okay, so transformation. The function of story is to guide us through the universal transformations of life, collectively known as individuation, using archetypes with their symbolic characters and patterns of behavior. So basically what this means is that stories can be the map that we follow to get to where we want to be. Rather than just backwards or stuck, they can show us the map of how to get forward. And I'm going to stop just for a minute, and I would love it if folks could put in the chat a story or a book or a film, anything, something that someone shared with you, a story that changed your life, a story that illuminated something to you and changed the trajectory that you were traveling on in some small or big way. For me, it was the heroine's journey when I learned about it. And I'll say, and while folks are filling in the chat, I'll say that the heroine's journey has been around forever. It's been around forever. Some of the classic films and stories that we know, The Wizard of Oz, that's the heroine's journey. Dorothy realizes that home is where she belongs. And she's grown and evolved and changed and claimed her light, and she comes back home to where she belongs, and she belongs even more than when she left. Um, for those of you who have young kids, K-pop Demon Hunters, that is the heroine's journey. Um, Jane Eyre, Little Women, Women Who Run with the Wolves.
Wolves.
Yes. Colleen, that book, wow. The Mists of Avalon, yes, Faye, that, wow. Sky Mother. Oh, I don't know that book, Cindy. I'm going to look into that. Can you put in the chat who wrote that? Search for Anna Fisher and Lost and Found by Betty Jean Lifton. Oh, beautiful. If Women Rose Rooted. Yes. Yes. Wow. The Pregnant Version by Marion Woodman. Wow. Wow. Yes. Marion Woodman is incredible. Singing in the Rain, The Odyssey. Yes. Yes. And Circe is incredible. Nancy Drew books. Yes. Yes. Beautiful. Beautiful. Um, you're welcome to continue to put in the chat books that changed the trajectory for you, books that altered your sense of yourself and who you could be and the path that you could walk. You're welcome to continue to put those in there. Those are such A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. Yes, yes, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen and um, so here again, here's the same quote from Jung talking about the function of story. So here's the first challenge in this individuation journey. So I talked about leaving college and going off to the Peace Corps. The first challenge, it's the same thing for the hero and the heroine. Their challenge is to stand up on their own and take up their individual power. This is the challenge of developing a relationship with yourself. And this is a very dense screen I'm going to show you, this next one. But here is, if we break it down in a very linear structured way, I find that I need both. My brain needs both the story and the way it is this fluid thing that can't quite be pinned down, and I need graphs and charts. I need to anchor myself in both ways of seeing something. And so this is for that other part of our brain. And I'm going to just point out a few things, and you're welcome to look at this in depth, and we'll send out the recording if you want to look at it again. But when we think about it, just we'll look at my story as the template. I went out on the hero's journey, and that meant that it was me out making the self-sacrifice, right? The drive was self-sacrifice, and the highest purpose was to be brave and develop skills, and that was the power to shape the world even against the will of others. So that was me trying to address this major global challenge specific to this community, and that's what I tried to do. In contrast, had I known to follow the feminine journey, the heroine's journey, I would have, instead of trying to fight against something, I would have been trying to lean into my deepest longing. I would have been trying, seeking towards self-fulfillment. And that would have been to be authentic and know joy. And I would have known that if I followed that journey early on, if I was authentic and cultivated joy, that it would empower those around me to um, to see someone who is capable of being everything they could be. And it would show them that this is possible for them too, and it would elevate my whole world. But I didn't know that this existed. I didn't know that this was a path to walk. I didn't know that there were specific points that this journey could be broken down into beats. I didn't know. Um, and this is really interesting. So I mentioned that Maureen Murdoch had a conversation with Joseph Campbell that led her to start that led her to go on the journey of articulating the heroine's journey and what it is. And this is what she said. She asked Joseph Campbell, "Hey, what about the female journey?" And Joseph Campbell said to her, "Woman is already there. All she has to do is realize that she is the place that people are trying to get to." And for Maureen, that was really unsatisfying. She was like, "Look, that feels very unfulfilling. You're the place I'm trying to get to. What does that mean?" And so she went back and she looked at stories throughout all of time, and she's a Jungian analyst, so she looked at it from that lens, and she said, no, actually, there is a narrative structure, there is a story template that is just as valid, just as real as the hero's journey. And it is the feminine journey. And it is a journey that, I want to be really clear that men and women can walk the hero's journey and the heroine's journey, that it's different aspects of that exist within all of us. We all have the potential to be a hero. We all have the potential to be a heroine. And sometimes I think it's really important that we learn how to be the hero. I was just talking to a friend of mine this morning who's a therapist, and he said that he is working with a woman who's in a very abusive relationship. Violence, lots of violence. She's lost bones. She was almost killed last time. There was a violent encounter with her partner, and that she is really struggling to leave. And he said that in this situation for her, it has to be that she leaves. It has to be that she ends it, that she breaks it, that she cannot compromise. She cannot try and work it out. She must leave. And that is the hero's journey, where you must end, break, sever. There are situations in our lives where we cannot follow the heroine's journey. She cannot stay and compromise in this situation. She cannot find her light and inspire those around her to lean into their light with her. That is not possible in this situation. But when we talk about individuation, when we're not talking about extreme circumstances like that, the path of the heroine is one who says, yes, there are all these things in the world to be afraid of. Yes, there are all these causes that are just and good that someone should be fighting. And I trust, and this has been my journey where I now live. I now live in the world of stories and storytelling and supporting writers. I do not go back out into the hero's journey and spend myself to a depleted, self-sacrificed way. I don't do that anymore because I now know that the heroine's journey, where I lean into my light, where I am authentic and I build community, is my best way to be of service. And it feeds me, it doesn't drain me. And this is the path that I want more people to know about. This is the path that I want people to understand how to follow and lean into. And here's the thing, we cannot do it alone. And I'll just break this down again because I've talked about it quite a bit. Here's the difference between the hero's journey and the heroine's journey, right? The hero must overcome fear. He leaves his home to go kill the evil dark thing, he or she. He receives some support. His journey is ultimately a solitary one. He must annihilate the evil force on his own. So this woman who is in an abusive relationship, she's the one that needs to end it. And people can support her and she can have a therapist, but she's the one that needs to say, I am done. And she cannot compromise. And then even if he returns home victorious, he remains at some level a lonely figure. So this woman, when she leaves that relationship, she will be, she can have support, she can have people support her, but she's the one that needs to take those steps and to have that sever, to break that thing and to be in the isolation of that. In contrast, the heroine's journey, to know authentic joy, the heroine must honor the value of her own internal light. And this will, on her journey, like we talked about earlier, I asked for moments where you felt like you didn't belong anymore. That's part of the heroine's journey too. There are moments where she no longer fits her world, and she has to step outside of it to seek those who can see her and validate her and honor her for what she is becoming. But unlike the hero, when she steps outside that world that created her, she does not, while there is that moment of individuation where that she must be alone to sort of take that stand, she must leave it behind. She must say, this constrictive space limits me and I must find a way out. She must do that. And as we learn in the template of the heroine's journey, she kind of toggles in and out, just like I did. She goes back into the world that she came from, and then she she leans into the heroine's journey, and then she goes back to the world she came from, and she leans into the heroine's journey. She toggles back and forth between what she loves and what she thinks she should be doing. And then in the end, there comes a choice point where she has to choose what she loves. And she has to choose it over conforming to the world that she came from. And this is the rift that happens when she chooses her internal light. There is an initial break. There is a period where she does not belong, where she no longer fits her world. And this is the choice point for the heroine, where she chooses to love herself over the longing to belong. But for the heroine, she cannot live in isolation for very long. The heroine's journey requires her to find places where she does belong. When she leaves the world behind, she must find people who can see her, validate her, love her, and acknowledge her for who she is and where she is. And here's the thing, the heroine's success depends on her ability to form genuine relationships with herself and others. So I'm going to tell you a story right now that is really that is very moving to me, and then I'm going to ask you some questions about it. So I have a very dear friend, Dina Trujillo, who worked with the Omidyar Foundation, and she traveled all around the world studying people who are resilient in the face of trauma. And she spent the majority of her time interviewing women who'd survived the rape camps in the Congo. And she found that there were three things in common, that all their research, decades of research, there were three things in common with people who were resilient in the face of trauma. And the very first one was that they knew they were not alone, that someone could see and be with them in all of their pain and suffering and longing for more. They knew they were not alone. The second one was a sense of agency, that you had some control over your own life. And the third one was a sense of purpose, that you could contribute to something greater than just yourself. And you can see how that maps in with the heroine's journey. That is the journey of the heroine. She cannot go it alone. So I'm curious, and I'd love to hear from folks here on the chat, that when you have been able to grow, what has happened when you've tried to do it on your own? And what has happened when you sought out others who can see and validate and honor your light for who you long to be? I'd just love to know what has happened when you've tried to do it on your own, and what's happened when you've sought out others, when you've known how important it is to have that reflection, to have that mirrored back to you, to know that you're not alone. And as you write, I'll say that for me, it was my work with writers. It was my work with leading writing groups in marginalized communities, and then working with people who had published their work. It was me being with people who had chosen that journey of authentic expression, of leaning into the power of story. That's where I felt like I belonged. That's where I felt as though I belonged to myself, or I could belong to myself. And I'm going to see what folks vote in the chat here. Yes, Rose wrote, you can learn from others on your journey, but you are also teaching them something, and that is what fulfills you. Yes, absolutely. Nancy says, great to hear this right now. Andrea writes, after 4 years, I'm still mostly alone. I realized I don't belong in the spiritual community, so I'm in the between again. Oh, becoming a teacher of gifted kids who long for community. Oh, yeah. Wow. Beautiful. I'm going to see a friend of mine later today, who her name is Maya Curtis, and she was in the tsunami. She was in a boat in Thailand during the tsunami, and the boat capsized, and there were 12 people who survived the boat being capsized, but they didn't have enough buoys for everyone. So they linked arms and they shared the buoys, and they were in the water for 14 hours waiting to be rescued. And 5 of the 14 people died, and they had to just let them go. And when they were finally rescued, Maya found herself on this long journey of coming back home to herself. That was, um, and she shared with me once, she said, listen, Amy, whenever one door closes, another one opens, but the hallways are shitty. And I think of this as the heroine's journey. That shitty hallway is when you first say, okay, I claim my light, but I don't yet have the people, the places, the container where I can honor it. I'm just on my own. I'm trying on my own. The hallways are shitty. And Tamar writes, I'm planning to create community of women seeking to answer their soul's call in the second half of life. Wow, Tamar, yes. Yes. Beautiful. Beautiful. And Faye writes, there's a few, but right now, two friends and I regularly leave long voice messages for each other. These two friends and I have been incredibly tight during the last few years since the pandemic. I love that. Tasha wrote, becoming isolated in my marriage, but holding on to a handful of other relationships. They appear, and others I thought I had lost stepped up. Yes, beautiful. Beautiful. I love that. I love that, everyone. It's really important. Um, we cannot do it alone. And learning about that, learning about the heroine's journey lifted a huge burden from my shoulders because I had been so indoctrinated, as we all are in our culture, in the hero's journey, that I should be able to do it on my own, that I didn't know that I could not get where I long to belong. I could not belong if I didn't form meaningful relationships with myself and others. I didn't know. And I wonder if that's true for other people here too. Have we've tried to earn our belonging by being the hero. We've tried to fight against fear rather than the alternate journey of leading with what we love. I wonder if other people, Faye, 100% relate. Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Yeah. And Tasha writes, yes. Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna show another slide here. Well, actually, I'll show you. This is fun. This is the distinction. This is, I mentioned Gail Carriger, and I liked how sort of snarky and pithy she is. So she put, this is her definition of the hero's journey versus the heroine's journey in one pithy sentence, as she says. So this is the hero's journey. Um, Increasingly isolated protagonist stomps around prodding evil with pointy bits, eventually fatally prods baddie, gains glory and honor. That's the hero's journey, which, we all follow at some point in our lives. Here's the heroine's journey. Increasingly networked protagonist strides around with good friends, prodding them and others onto victory together. So I ask you, which story do you want to live into right now? What story do we need as a people, as a global society? There's people from all over the world on this call right here. What story do we need? I know which one I want to live into. Faye said she found looking for fame and success and finding it empty when she was following the hero's journey. Yes, 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 yes. Um, I'd love, feel free to put in the chat, like what story, like why do you think the heroine's journey is important now? Why do you think it's important right now? Why do you think it's the story that we want our legacy to be, not the hero's journey? There are times where we might need to walk the hero's journey, for sure, but that's not the legacy I want to leave behind. I want to belong to myself and to the world. I want to belong. And I want to support others in finding that belonging. Um, oh, Susan and Marilyn, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. I love what you write, that heroine's journey is the connective tissue we need. Yes. And then Faye writes, do we think there are pauses in the heroine's journey? Is that pause, there's rationale, we lost the pause in our reactionary? Oh yeah, that's a really great point, Faye. Yeah, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, and then Tamar writes, the world lacks sufficient, authentic, soul-based community. I agree. And Susanna writes, have 4 published books, found it empty, now facilitate therapeutic writing and treatment centers. Oh, Susanna, beautiful. Yes, we are kindred spirits in the power of therapeutic writing. Um, it is such a powerful modality. Rose, right? A lot of people are scared right now, and we feel uncertainty in a heavy way right now. And that is the truth. And going it alone in this kind of world doesn't even really have meaning anymore. Yes, Rose, wow. We should bring awareness and acceptance to a non-linear, fluid journey like a beautiful, twisted labyrinth. Yes, yes. Wow. Wow, there are some beautiful writers here. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Um, Before we end, I want to just share with you um, the the template for the heroine's journey that and there's different versions of it, but my favorite, like I mentioned, is from Kim Hudson. And this is my favorite version. I'm going to share the template with you so you can see the steps on the journey, and then we'll just so you can see, like, this is the map. This is the map to walk. This is the trail to put your feet on and to move along if you want to lead with love. So I'm going to share this template with you. Gail Carriger and Maureen Murdoch also have beautiful versions of this, but this one's my favorite. Um, so here's the journey. We start off in the dependent world, where we are in a world that we need to conform in. We are dependent on another. This is the journey of individuation, right? That's what the heroine is doing. She's individuating. And we see in this journey the price of conformity. What happens when we dim our light to fit in? What happens when we dim our light to belong? And then the heroine has an opportunity to shine. She has an opportunity to lean in towards what she loves. And then she dresses the part. So we can think of different characters in our life. So let's talk about, has everybody seen Frozen from Elsa? Elsa in Frozen? Okay, so we see Elsa is in this dependent world. The story, if you don't know it, it's well worth watching. It's a Disney movie, but it's not like the old school Disney movies where the princess gets saved by the prince. Elsa is in a world where she cannot allow her magic. She can create ice with her hands. She cannot allow her magic. And we see the price of conformity. She's isolated. She can't form any meaningful friendships. She can't even be close to her sister. And then she has an opportunity to shine. And she has this moment that forces itself upon her where she accidentally shoots off her, she plays with her sister. Um, sorry, if you, I'm gonna pause this just for a second. So if you aren't muted, if you could mute yourself, that would be amazing. Um, so she plays with her sister, right? Like she can't show the world, but she gets to play with her sister. And they go and they do the ice, they make the sand castles and they do the snowmen and they make Olaf. Um, and then she has this she plays around with it. She can dress the part when she's playing with her sister, and they have their secret world that they live into, right? And then this thing happens where she accidentally harms her sister. She shoots her with a blast of ice, and the sister gets hurt, and she no longer fits her world. Um, and she tries for a long time to conform. She tries, and she tries to conform. And then we see this incident where she's mad at her sister, and in front of the whole kingdom, she shines her light. She flashes her fire. And the whole kingdom goes into pandemonium. She gives up what kept her stuck. She says, screw it. The cold never bothered me anyway. And she goes off and she sings her song, Let It Go, let it go. She gives up what kept her stuck. And then the whole kingdom's in chaos. They like, oh my gosh, we lost our queen and she's this crazy witch and what do we do? And she goes off and she wanders in the wilderness, right? And this is when she's in the castle and she builds her stone castle, her ice castle. And then we see her grappling with, is she going to go to the dark side? Is she going to go to the light side? And that's the heroine's journey, right? Is she going to use her power for good? Is she going to use it not for good? Ultimately, because of her sister, she chooses her light. And if we remember the scene with her sister, Anna risks her own life to save Elsa. So the mean prince tries to kill Elsa. Anna jumps in, stops the prince from killing Elsa, and this this heroine has been rescued by another. What's really important to acknowledge in this rescuing of the heroine is that it cannot be her getting rescued in a way that conforms her to the old system. She can no longer be complicit in a system that keeps her trapped. She can't be rescued in a way that's like, okay, I'll no longer use my power. It's fine. She has to be allowed to own her light, her power in the way that she is rescued. And then as a result, the whole kingdom is brighter. The whole kingdom is brighter. I love that moment where it's love. She says love, loves the power. And she takes her hands and she uses her love and she spreads it everywhere and all the ice melts with her love. Her love. The whole world is a brighter place because she chose her light. I am so grateful that you guys showed up today to go on this journey with me. I'm just so, so grateful. This is where I'm going to stop the class portion of it. The sort of adventure of these specific, the story and the template that anchors it. And I'm going to share a little bit more about how you can continue on this journey with me if you'd like. If you don't want to know about that, you're welcome to Zoom, check out of the Zoom now. But if you'd like to know how you can stay on this journey with me, I'm going to share more about that now. And I'm going to put into the chat the course that I'll be leading through the School for Sacred Storytelling. And then I'll share it on my screen, but I'll put into the chat the course. And the tsunami survivor has not written a book, but I'm actually going to spend the afternoon with her, and she's been coming to my writing workshops, so hopefully she will soon. Okay, so sharing my screen. Here we go. Okay, so here's the course. It is the Heroine's Journey, and it's a 6-week course. We meet every other Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. and we'll do an overview of it all. And the real point of this course is to lean into the wisdom of the heroine's journey, which is that we cannot do it alone. We cannot walk this journey alone. And so it's building the community, the container to engage in this transformative journey together. And we'll go into all sorts of things. We'll talk about where you are in that map. We'll use an opportunity to go deep into it. We'll talk about the 2 paths to liberation. We'll talk about the hero's journey versus the heroine's journey. We'll go deep into the beat points for both of them. We'll see how the journey of the heroine is that of the wounded healer. Healing is transformation. How she heals herself is the medicine that she brings into the world to share with others. We'll talk about the shadow side, which is one of my current obsessions. I love learning about if you're not choosing your light, what is the consequence of that? What is the consequence of that in your life and in the lives of the people around you? And I also I'm doing another masterclass on Friday, the 26th, that's going into the anti-heroine because I think it's really important that we acknowledge the shadow side, because when we face it and we look at it and we understand it, it loses some of its power over us. And it also, we can integrate the wisdom that it has, because the shadow isn't all bad. There's things we can learn from it. And then we'll look into your past, and we'll look at when have you followed the heroine's journey in the past, and we'll help you look at times in your life where you've followed this map, and we'll look at where it led you and what you gleaned from it. And then we'll create a map for our futures. We'll look at where it is we want to go, and we'll chart out that map for ourselves. How do we get there? What challenges are we likely to face? And how do we overcome them? Um, okay. All right. And then also for today, anyone who signs up for the Heroine's Journey course, within the next 24 hours, you will get a free writing jam with me. And Krista and Faye and Amy, who are here with us, they've all been in writing jams. Writing jams is a way that I bring people together to create. I've been doing them for over 20 years now. It's the model that I've used in shelters for the unhoused. It's model that I've used with refugee communities. And what we do is we come together, we set an intention, I give prompts, and we all write together for 10 minutes and then share what we've written with the group for um, for positive, affirming reflection. So we get to create authentically, we get to share, we get to be seen, we get to be held. And those of you who've written with me for a long time can attest that there's this magical synchronicity that happens. I remember one time I was in a group with Faye, and I think the prompt was something like the color blue, and 4 people wrote about redwood trees. So there's this alchemy that happens when you come together to create in real time. It's a quickening that I found happens. So anybody who signs up today, you'll be invited to join a free writing jam as part of signing up. And I do a couple writing jams a month, so you can fit it into your schedule. Does anybody have any questions? No questions. Um, Well, if you feel inspired, I'd love for you to put in the chat what you took from today. If there's anything that you want to remember that you gleaned from this time, that you want to remember, that you want to share with others. Because remember, in the heroine's journey, when we speak our authentic truth and we lean into our light, it elevates everyone else around us. So if you want to put in the chat something that you gleaned from today, something that you're going to carry forward to allow you to belong more to yourself and to the world, share it with us so we can all remember. Great. Daily check-in with myself to remember. Yes, Faye. Lori, right. I'd never heard of the heroine's journey. Oh, Lori, yay. I'm so happy to be able to introduce you to it. It's changed my life. It's changed my life. Um, and Susanna's going to write more short stories. Kimberly writes, What You Love Matters. Yes. 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 I love that. What you love matters. And in fact, when you lean into what you love, it allows others to do the same. And Tamar says she feels like she's been on a heroine journey all her life, relevant for the teaching and coaching. Great. I'm so happy. Krista writes the importance of knowing the difference between the feminine and masculine. Both are important. And when I leaned into my masculine, I'm fatigued. Yes. Yes. That's what happens. Yeah. And there's a time for it, right? There are some things that need to end, but it's not a sustainable path. It's not a sustainable path. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I'm so grateful that you chose to spend some time on your day with me today on a weekend. This is just, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. And I hope you took something from here that will serve you. Bye, everyone. Take good care.